Hi, I'm Lena, and welcome to Super Data JP, the channel where we turn Japan's real estate and cost of living numbers into answers you can actually use. Every video here is built on verified government data, not opinions and not guesses. Whether you're planning to invest, relocate, or just curious what life in Japan really costs, you're in the right place. Let's get into today's numbers.
Hiroshima's population just shrank for the first time since the Second World War. Down 2.4%, 28,331 fewer people, according to the newest census data. And yet, right next to the train station, property prices are climbing faster than almost anywhere else in the city. First stop in a new set of cities we're covering, Hiroshima today, then Sendai, then the resort markets of Niseko and Karuizawa. Hiroshima is the one that looks like a contradiction on paper, a shrinking city with a booming pocket inside it. This is for anyone weighing a mid-sized regional Japanese city against Tokyo or Osaka, and for anyone who assumes a shrinking population automatically means a dead real estate market. In Hiroshima's case, that assumption would cost you the best opportunity in the city. Let's start with the headline number. Hiroshima's population stood at 1,200,754 at the 2020 census. The newest count puts it at 1,172,423, a decline confirmed for the first time in the city's post-war history. Hiroshima isn't alone. Of Japan's 20 designated cities, 13 posted population declines in the same count, Yokohama among them. Japan's era of guaranteed urban growth is quietly ending, even in cities you'd assume were immune. So why would anyone buy property in a shrinking city? Because citywide population trends and neighborhood-level price trends are two completely different data sets, and in Hiroshima right now, they're pointing in opposite directions. Start with the official land valuation. Commercial land in Hiroshima City rose 4.6% in the most recent assessment, residential land rose 2.4%. Compare that to the prefecture as a whole, which posted 2.7% commercial and 1.3% residential. The city core is meaningfully outrunning the prefecture average. This isn't a one-year blip either. Hiroshima Prefecture has now posted 4 consecutive years of land price growth, with roughly 90% of residential points in the city posting gains. But the real story is concentrated in one specific pocket, the area around Hiroshima Station, on the south side, saw land prices jump 9.8% in a single year, driven by a brand new station building that opened in spring 2025. The single highest priced commercial spot in the city remains Hakabori, the traditional banking and office district. For residential land, Shirajima, close to both downtown and the station, is the area buyers are chasing hardest. Now here's where it gets genuinely counterintuitive. We pulled actual 2024 transaction data for used condos across all 8 of Hiroshima's wards, straight from Japan's land ministry, to see which one commands the highest price per square meter. This isn't a small sample either. Across the 8 wards combined, the dataset covers well over 1,000 individual condo sales in a single year, enough transactions per ward to treat the comparison as a real market signal, not statistical noise from a handful of outlier sales. It isn't Nakaku, the historic downtown core. It's Minami-ku, the station front ward, at roughly 469,565 yen per square meter, versus roughly 441,632 yen in Nakaku. The redevelopment pocket has already overtaken the traditional city center on a per square meter basis. At the other end, Asakita-ku, a quieter, more residential ward further from the station, runs closer to 182,723 yen per square meter. That's roughly a 2.6 times gap between the cheapest and most expensive ward, inside the same city, on the same dataset. The lesson here isn't unique to Hiroshima, but it's unusually visible here. In a city with a shrinking overall population, capital concentrates hard into the handful of neighborhoods with a specific catalyst, in this case, a literal new train station, and drains slowly out of everywhere else. None of that matters for an investor without knowing what it actually rents for. So let's talk yield. Citywide, gross rental yields for residential property run roughly 3.5 to 5.5%, with the premium central ward sitting at the lower end of that range and the outer wards at the higher end, the classic price versus yield trade-off. A few specific pockets stand out for yield specifically. Yokogawa runs roughly 5.0 to 5.5%. Danbara runs roughly 4.5 to 5%. Astrom Line Corridor runs roughly 4.5 to 5.5%. And the entry price is the real draw here. Comparable property in Hiroshima runs roughly 60% cheaper than equivalent property in Tokyo, while still delivering yields Tokyo's premium wards rarely match. Financing follows the same pattern as the rest of this series. Residents with steady Japanese income can often reach loan-to-value ratios of 70 to 90%, while non-residents typically need far more cash up front, at rates closer to 1.0 to 2.5%. Before you get too excited about that station front pocket, though, there's a geography problem worth understanding, one that has nothing to do with population trends. Central Hiroshima sits on a river delta, built across 6 branches of the Oda River system. It's low-lying, flat, and surrounded by water on multiple sides, which is part of why the city looks the way it does, and part of why it floods. When a typhoon hits at the same time as a high tide, storms surge and river flooding can compound in the low-lying delta areas. Several of the rivers running through the city are officially designated flood risk waterways, and that isn't a hypothetical, it's a recurring seasonal risk baked into the city's geography, and it's exactly the kind of thing a foreign buyer evaluating a listing photo from overseas would never think to check. The flip side shows up in the price data too. Asakita-ku, the outer ward with the most exposure to flooding and landslide risk, is also the ward with the flattest price trend in the city, running roughly -2 to 1% a year, essentially flat to slightly down, while the station front ward posts double-digit gains. None of this means avoid Hiroshima. It means check the flood hazard map for the specific parcel before you buy, the same way you check earthquake risk anywhere else in Japan. A property 2 blocks apart can sit on completely different ground, literally and financially. The broader risk is the population trend itself. If the station front catalyst fades, or if redevelopment simply runs out of room, a citywide population decline this consistent eventually shows up in prices outside the handful of neighborhoods currently outrunning it. The most common mistake here runs in both directions, writing off Hiroshima entirely because the population is shrinking, or buying anywhere in the city assuming the station area boom applies everywhere. Neither red survives contact with the ward-level data. Put it together and Hiroshima rewards buyers who go neighborhood by neighborhood, proximity to the station redevelopment for growth, flood zoning for risk, and actual ward-level transaction data instead of citywide population headlines for pricing, rather than buyers who treat a shrinking city as a single, uniform market in either direction. Next in this set, Sendai, Tohoku's largest city and one that's still actually growing, a genuinely different setup from Hiroshima's concentrated pocket of growth inside an overall decline. A shrinking population doesn't mean a dead market, it means the market gets more selective about where the growth actually happens, and the buyers who check the block-by-block data are the ones who find it before everyone else does. Subscribe for more data-driven breakdowns of living and investing in Japan, and let us know which city or topic you want covered next.
And that's today's breakdown. If you're serious about real estate or moving to Japan, research like this is exactly what separates a smart decision from an expensive mistake. Subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive, and drop a comment if there's a city or word you want us to cover next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.